Have you ever wondered what America tasted like before fast food took over? Long before drive-thrus and frozen dinners, native cooks turned corned beans and wild herbs into dishes that fed both body and spirit. But over time, those sacred recipes were forgotten, buried beneath convenience and modern trends. In this video, we'll journey back through the forgotten foods that built a nation's table, from succotash to fry bread, each with a story carved into history. Stay with us till the end, and if you love rediscovering America's roots, hit like and subscribe so these stories never fade away. 1. Succotash. Imagine a warm summer afternoon in a small New England town, the scent of corn and butter drifting through open windows. On nearly every kitchen table sat a bowl of succotash, a humble mix of corn and lima beans simmered in cream and love. But long before it became a side dish in 1970s cookbooks, succotash was sacred food to the Narragansett people. Its name came from misiquatash, meaning boiled corn kernels, a meal that celebrated the harmony of the earth's gifts. Each spoonful told a story of balance, the sweetness of corn, the softness of beans, the richness of the soil. Families in the 1970s often added bacon, okra, or tomatoes, turning this ancient dish into a creamy comfort food for the modern table. A pot cost barely $1, back then feeding 6 hungry souls, proof that nourishment didn't need luxury. By the 1980s, lighter and quicker sides replaced it, but nothing captured the same spirit of harvest abundance. When you taste succotash, you taste a legacy, one that began in tribal fires and found its way to every American kitchen. It's more than a recipe, it's a conversation between generations. 2. Corn pudding. Picture a wood-paneled kitchen glowing under the amber light of a hanging lamp, the sound of a whisk scraping gently against a ceramic bowl. In the heart of the American South during the 1970s, corn pudding was the quiet star of Sunday dinners. But its roots reach back centuries to native cooks who ground dried maize into meal and mixed it with water, milk, or animal fat over open fires. What later became a sweet custard began as a sacred way to use every kernel, honoring the harvest spirit of the land. The texture was unlike anything else, golden on top, soft as silk inside. Housewives in 1976 could bake a family-sized dish for about $2 using fresh or canned corn, eggs, and milk. It arrived at church suppers and family reunions, disappearing by the spoonful before the main course even began. Then came the microwave era, faster, easier, less patient, yet no modern shortcut can replace that slow, creamy sweetness or the scent of baked corn filling the kitchen. Corn pudding was never just a side dish. It was a memory, the taste of gratitude born from native soil and carried through generations. Sand. Scalloped tomatoes. Step into a farmhouse kitchen in the late 1970s where sunlight pours across a wooden table covered with Garden Bounty tomatoes, ripened to deep crimson day-old bread waiting to be reborn. Scalloped tomatoes were a thrifty treasure, a casserole of humble ingredients baked into something rich and comforting. Yet its story goes back much further to the native and early settler practice of never wasting the earth's gifts. Every crop, every crust had a purpose. Cooks layered chunks of bread with stewed tomatoes, butter, and a hint of sugar, letting the mixture bubble into a tangy golden dish. The smell was pure nostalgia, sweet, savory, and slightly smoky from the old iron stove. A pan in 1973 might have cost 50 cents to make, turning leftovers into a feast. As supermarkets filled with year-round produce, this seasonal ritual faded away. But scalloped tomatoes weren't about convenience. They were about respect for the harvest, for what the land provided in its time. Each bite carried that reminder: abundance is not in what we buy, but in what we remember to cherish. Which of these dishes so far would have graced your family's table back then? 4. Three-bean salad. Close your eyes and picture a summer picnic in the 1970s. Gingham blankets spread across green grass, the hum of cicadas, and a glass bowl of three-bean salad catching the sunlight. Green beans, wax beans, and kidney beans marinated in a tangy vinegar dressing with onions and peppers created a dish both bright and satisfying. But its deeper roots trace back to an ancient idea: the three sisters of native agriculture, corn, beans, and squash. These plants grew together, nourished one another, and symbolized balance between earth and people. In a way, three-bean salad was a suburban echo of that harmony. Housewives loved it because it could sit for days and only taste better, no refrigerator required for the family potluck. In 1975, a generous bowl cost about $1.50, a simple luxury that united neighbors under shade trees. By the 1980s, pasta salads took its place, sleek and modern, but missing the story behind the beans. Three-bean salad remains a quiet lesson in sustainability and community, a dish that carries the wisdom of the land itself. 5. Harvard beets. Imagine the glimmer of ruby red beets simmering in a small saucepan on a chilly evening in the 1970s. The kitchen fills with a sweet, earthy aroma as vinegar and sugar mingle in a glossy glaze. Though the dish bore the refined name Harvard beets, its soul was far older, rooted in the native tradition of honoring every harvest from the soil, especially the roots that sustained them through long winters. The color alone could lift a family meal from ordinary to festive. Some cooks added orange juice or cloves for depth, others a pat of butter for richness. In 1977, a serving for 6 cost barely 60 cents, proof that elegance didn't require extravagance. The balance of sweet and sour mirrored the rhythm of life itself, hardship and reward, earth and heart. As the decades turned, sweet vegetable dishes fell out of favor, replaced by lighter fare. Yet the memory of Harvard beets endures not just as a recipe, but as a reflection of gratitude to the ground beneath us. Each shining slice tells a story of endurance, color, and the quiet beauty of simple things. 6. Ambrosia salad. Picture a holiday table in the American South during the 1970s, polished crystal bowls gleaming beneath the glow of tinsel and candlelight. Inside one of them rests ambrosia, a creamy mix of oranges, pineapple, cherries, and coconut, folded with sour cream or Cool Whip. Its name meant food of the gods, and for many families it truly was a sacred sweetness that brought generations together after the turkey had been carved and the hymns were sung. But ambrosia's essence goes deeper than its sugar and fruit. It carries echoes of ancient harvest festivals when early native and settler communities celebrated the gifts of the land, the citrus, the nuts, the fruits preserved through the winter. By 1973, ingredients for a family bowl cost about $3, yet the memories it created were priceless. Every spoonful sparkled like childhood joy. As lighter desserts took over the 1980s, ambrosia slowly faded from the table. Still, nothing matches the way it shimmered under holiday lights, a symbol of warmth, family, and celebration. If you're enjoying this trip through food and memory, hit like and subscribe for more timeless stories from America's culinary roots. 7. Tomato aspic. Step back into a sunlit kitchen of the 1970s where the hum of a ceiling fan mixes with the gentle clinking of glass molds. Tomato aspic, a shimmering red ring of savory gelatin, sat proudly on buffet tables, cool and glistening like a jewel from another era. Made from tomato juice, unflavored gelatin, and a hint of Worcestershire and celery salt, it carried both elegance and a whisper of the garden's soul. Its ancestry, however, runs deeper than the mold itself. Long before refrigeration, native cooks turned summer harvests into preserved broths and soups, using nature's bounty to sustain through the cold. Tomato aspic, though modernized, echoed that instinct, the desire to hold on to the taste of sunshine. In 1974, a molded dish for 8 cost less than $1, a luxury of color and creativity. By the mid-1980s, fresh salads replaced its glossy presence, yet few dishes captured summer spirit so perfectly. The cool tang of tomato aspic was more than flavor. It was memory suspended in time, a reflection of our endless longing to preserve what we love. 8. Marinated mushrooms. Imagine opening a refrigerator in the 1970s and catching the scent of herbs, garlic, and vinegar wafting from a glass jar. Inside, tiny button mushrooms glisten like polished stones steeped in oil and spices. Marinated mushrooms were a symbol of sophistication back then, a favorite on antipasto platters and dinner party relish trays. But beneath the glamour lies a connection to something far older, the native tradition of foraging wild mushrooms from the forest floor, guided by instinct and respect for nature's rhythm. In those early days, gathering meant gratitude. Every cap and stem carried the wisdom of seasons. By 1976, a pound of marinated mushrooms cost about $2 to prepare, an affordable luxury that brought woodland flavors to suburban tables. Cooks let them soak for days, absorbing every hint of garlic and rosemary until each bite burst with earthy tang. When fresh salads and raw vegetables became the fashion, these flavorful jars quietly vanished. Yet, marinated mushrooms remind us of the delicate bridge between wilderness and kitchen, a simple dish that carried the forest into every American home. 9. Rice pilaf. Picture the soft hiss of butter melting in a heavy pan, the faint aroma of toasted vermicelli rising through a 1970s kitchen. Rice pilaf, or the San Francisco treat as some called it, wasn't just a boxed side dish. It was a reflection of America's growing curiosity about flavors beyond its borders. Yet, at its heart, it echoed something deeply native, the reverence for grain as life itself. Long before the word pilaf appeared on packaging, tribes of the Great Lakes gathered wild rice manoomin by canoe, singing harvest songs as the grains fell into their boats. That sacred practice gave birth to a respect for rice that endured through centuries. By 1978, a homemade pilaf cost about 50 cents per serving and often featured almonds, herbs, or raisins stirred gently into the pan. As quick-cook packets replaced tradition, the spirit of wild rice faded from memory. But every forkful of true pilaf, nutty, golden, and fragrant, whispers the same message the Ojibwe once sang that the land provides if we listen. It's more than a side dish. It's a quiet hymn to the earth. 10. Green bean casserole. Imagine Thanksgiving Day in the 1970s, the air filled with warmth, laughter, and the unmistakable aroma of green bean casserole baking in a Pyrex dish. Layers of tender beans, creamy mushroom soup, and crispy onions created the ultimate comfort food. Yet its deeper roots trace back to ancient harvest stews, when native families cooked beans, herbs, and wild mushrooms over open fires, a gathering of Earth's simplest gifts. By 1974, this dish had become a staple across America, costing just over $1 to serve an entire family. Housewives loved its reliability. It could travel to church dinners or reunions, staying delicious even after hours on the table. The taste was pure nostalgia, salty, creamy, and touched with the sweetness of memory. Though the health-conscious wave of the 1990s pushed it aside, no modern recipe has replaced that first bite beneath the onion crust. Green bean casserole is more than convenience in a can. It's a reflection of unity born from soil and shared tradition. Your comments keep these memories alive. Share your favorite forgotten side dish below, and let's keep the flavor of history glowing on every table. 11. Broccoli rice casserole. Picture a church potluck in the late 1970s, long folding tables lined with casseroles under silver foil, each one marked with a name written in pen. Somewhere in the middle sits a bubbling broccoli rice casserole, creamy golden and topped with a scattering of cracker crumbs. Beneath that humble crust lies a story of comfort, community, and adaptation, a bridge between the wild grains once harvested by native tribes and the convenience-driven kitchens of modern America. Frozen broccoli, instant rice, cheese, and soup from a can made it effortless, but the roots were older than the packaging. Long ago, meals built around one shared pot symbolized survival and unity. No one ate alone. By 1977, this dish cost around $2 to make enough to feed a dozen and warm twice as many hearts. When fresh greens and diet fads arrived in the 1980s, casseroles like this quietly disappeared. Yet, every spoonful still carries that same message that food tastes better when shared and warmth begins long before the oven door opens. It's a dish of belonging baked right into America's memory. 12. Pickled beets and eggs. Step into a roadside diner somewhere in Pennsylvania during the 1970s. On the counter sits a tall glass jar filled with deep magenta eggs glowing softly beneath the fluorescent lights. Pickled beets and eggs, sweet, tangy, and unmistakably vibrant, were both snack and spectacle. Each jar told a story of resourcefulness that stretched far back into time. Native peoples once preserved their harvest with vinegar, herbs, and salt long before refrigeration, turning necessity into art. By 1975, a jar cost barely $1 to make and could sit for weeks each day, deepening in color and flavor. Some families added onions or cloves, while others swore by their grandmother's secret spice. Bars displayed them proudly beside pretzels, a salty companion for a cold beer after a long day's work. As trends shifted and bar snacks modernized, these glowing jars vanished. Yet they remain a symbol of preservation, not only of food, but of memory. Their brilliant pink hue still feels like a heartbeat from the past, reminding us that beauty often lives inside the simplest traditions. 13. Perfection salad. Imagine a ladies' luncheon in the 1970s, the table adorned with lace pastel plates and a shimmering ring of vegetable gelatin at its center. This was Perfection salad, crisp cabbage, celery, and peppers, suspended in a translucent mold crowned with a swirl of mayonnaise like a halo. It was meant to impress, to show refinement and patience, but behind its glistening facade lay a quiet contrast between two worlds, the industrial kitchen of modern America and the free, untamed spirit of the land that once fed its people. Where native cooks once let flavors breathe in clay pots and open fires, this dish captured nature in confinement, a symbol of control, precision, and presentation. In 1973, making one mold cost about $1, an affordable luxury for every hostess eager to show grace. By the time the 1980s arrived, gelatin salads lost their charm to fresher greens and simpler fare. Still, Perfection salad endures as a glittering relic of an age fascinated with form, a reminder that perfection often means something different depending on how close you are to the earth. 14. Copper pennies. Picture a southern kitchen in the mid-1970s, the steady hum of a ceiling fan, sunlight cutting across mason jars lined on the counter. Inside each jar shimmered bright orange slices of carrots, perfectly round and glistening like newly minted coins. That's how the dish earned its name, copper pennies. But beneath its cheerful color lay a timeless idea, preserving the harvest, just as native communities once marinated roots and herbs to endure the season. Carrots were boiled until tender, then bathed in a tangy dressing of tomato soup, vinegar, sugar, and oil. Some added green peppers or a pinch of mustard for heat. By 1975, a family batch cost about $1 to make, yet it could last days, even improving as the flavors deepened. When the health trends of the 1980s turned away from sweet vegetables, copper pennies quietly disappeared. Still, that gleam of orange on the table spoke of gratitude for the garden, for thrift, for the art of turning simple things into beauty. Each glossy slice was a memory sealed in glass, a reminder that flavor, like history, only grows richer with time. 15. Creamed onions. Picture a Thanksgiving table in the 1970s, the golden turkey in the center, cranberry sauce sparkling in its dish, and beside it a bowl of tiny pearl onions blanketed in velvety cream. Creamed onions were a quiet tradition, never the star but always present, carrying the warmth of family and the patience of old kitchens. Their story stretches far before suburban dining rooms, back to the native practice of treasuring every root pulled from the soil, every bulb that promised nourishment through winter. Each onion was peeled by hand, boiled gently, and folded into a sauce of butter, milk, and a whisper of nutmeg. In 1974, a fresh batch for 8 servings cost barely $2, but the labor was priceless. Mothers and daughters worked side by side, chatting softly as the sauce thickened. By the 1980s, convenience replaced care. Frozen vegetables came pre-sauced, and time itself grew shorter. Yet, the taste of creamed onions remains a symbol of love, measured not in minutes, but in effort. A simple, sweet reminder that the best dishes are always made slowly and together. Have you noticed how every one of these old sides carries more than flavor, a memory, a ritual, a heartbeat from another time? 16. Zucchini bread. Imagine the sound of a back door creaking open on a hot afternoon in the 1970s. A neighbor steps in, arms full of green zucchini from an overflowing garden. Within an hour, the kitchen smells of butter, herbs, and baked bread, savory zucchini loaves cooling on wire racks. But the roots of this humble bread go far deeper than backyard abundance. For countless generations, native farmers had revered squash as one of the 3 sisters alongside corn and beans, symbols of balance, community, and survival. By turning squash into bread, modern cooks unknowingly continued that lineage, transforming excess into comfort. In 1979, a loaf cost roughly $1 to make, feeding families who knew how to stretch what they grew. Some added cheese or sun-dried tomatoes, others baked it plain, proud of its garden freshness. As artisan breads and imported grains became fashionable, zucchini bread slipped quietly into nostalgia. Yet its spirit remains a recipe of resilience, a reminder that food was once shared freely among neighbors and guided by the rhythm of the earth. Each slice carries that quiet lesson: nothing grown with love ever goes to waste. 17. Carrot ring. Picture a Sunday dinner table in the South during the late 1970s, candles flickering, china gleaming, and at the center a bright orange ring-shaped mold filled with pureed carrots. In the hollow middle sat green peas glowing like jewels against the golden hue. This was the carrot ring, part art, part comfort, and entirely home. But its circular shape held deeper meaning, echoing the native belief in the sacred circle, the cycle of life, earth, and renewal. Cooks blended steamed carrots with eggs, butter, and a hint of spice, baking it until firm yet tender. Junior League cookbooks praised its beauty, calling it a vegetable that dresses for dinner. In 1978, it cost about $1.50 to prepare, yet it looked fit for royalty. By the 1980s, formal presentation faded, and the carrot ring went with it. Still, its bright color and shape remind us of something timeless, that even the simplest roots can become symbols of celebration. On every table it graced. It wasn't just food, it was gratitude, molded into a circle, passed from one generation's hands to the next. 18. Spinach souffle. Picture the quiet hum of an oven in a suburban kitchen around the year 1975. Through the glass door you see a dish slowly rising, spinach souffle, airy and golden, its surface quivering like breath. Families loved it for its elegance, yet its roots reach far back to a time when native peoples gathered wild greens in open fields, turning nature's gifts into nourishment. Long before frozen spinach and cheese, they cooked with dandelion leaves, nettles, and wild herbs, creating meals that tasted of the land itself. By the 1970s, convenience brands like Stouffer's brought that wild spirit into tidy squares ready to bake. A homemade pan cost about $2 and fed a family with pride. The secret lay in patience, beating eggs just right, folding carefully, respecting the balance between air and earth. When microwaves and prepackaged sides took over in the 1980s, the souffle faded quietly from memory. Yet that rising dish remains a symbol of transformation, how humble greens can lift into something light and beautiful when treated with care. It's not just spinach and eggs, it's the story of every hand that ever turned the wild into comfort. 19. Waldorf salad picture, a polished dining room in the early 1970s, sunlight spilling across lace curtains, crystal bowls glinting with chilled apples and walnuts. Waldorf salad was the mark of refinement, yet its essence came from the earth's oldest offerings, crisp fruit, wild nuts, and herbs once gathered by native hands. Long before New York's Waldorf Hotel claimed the name, these same ingredients had sustained families who understood the rhythm of the seasons and the value of every harvest. The salad's beauty was in its simplicity: chopped apples and celery, tossed in a creamy dressing, sometimes sweetened with grapes or mandarin oranges. By 1974, it cost less than $1 per serving, but it tasted like celebration. Each bite offered contrast, sweet and tangy, crunchy and soft, just like the balance between nature and nurture. As health trends moved toward vinaigrettes and low-fat dressings, the classic Waldorf quietly disappeared. Yet nothing replaced the feeling of that cool, crisp crunch that spoke of orchards, autumn air, and family gatherings. In every glistening slice of apple lies a memory, a timeless connection between the forest, the farm, and the heart of the American table. 20. 7-layer salad. Imagine walking into a church hall in the 1970s, laughter echoing off tiled walls, the long tables lined with glass bowls showing off rainbow layers of food. There it is, the 7-layer salad, gleaming beneath its mayonnaise crown. Lettuce, peas, eggs, cheese, and bacon stacked like a tapestry of color and care. It wasn't just a dish, it was a performance, a celebration of abundance, made to be admired before it was eaten. Yet beneath its glossy surface lies an older truth. The idea of layering food, of honoring balance and variety, echoed the native belief in harmony between earth, air, and water. Each layer symbolized a piece of the harvest, a reminder that beauty and sustenance could exist in the same bowl. In 1978, it cost about $4 to make feeding 12 and leaving a room full of smiles. By the health-conscious 1980s, heavy dressings lost their charm. But that glass bowl remains a symbol of community, transparent, honest, and shared. Each layer told a story of connection where every color mattered and every hand had a place in the making. Your comments keep these memories alive. Drop yours below and share what your family layered on the table. Arshi. Glorified rice picture, a church basement in the Midwest during the late 1970s. Long tables covered in patterned cloth coffee percolating in the corner, and rows of brightly colored bowls filled with sweet salads. Among them sat glorified rice, pale and creamy, speckled with pineapple and cherries. To outsiders, it seemed puzzling, part dessert, part side dish, but to those who grew up with it, it tasted like Sunday comfort. Its roots, however, reach back to the northern lakes, where native tribes once gathered wild rice, manoomin, the sacred grain of life. As time passed, leftover rice found new forms, sweetened and shared in community halls across America. By 1975, a generous bowl cost about $1.50, stretching a simple grain into a feast. The arrival of modern desserts slowly pushed it aside, yet glorified rice remains a symbol of ingenuity, of how families turn the ordinary into something extraordinary. Every spoonful carried both nostalgia and reverence, reminding us that food was once a language of care, spoken softly across tables, where history and love met in every bite. 22. Stuffed celery picture, a holiday gathering in the 1970s, a polished glass relish tray passed from hand to hand, its neat rows of stuffed celery gleaming under the light. Each crisp stalk held a creamy filling of cheese or olives, a tiny bite of elegance before the main meal. Yet this modest appetizer carried echoes of something ancient, the native use of wild herbs and stalks, not just for flavor, but for healing and balance. Celery, once a medicine plant of the wetlands, had become a symbol of refinement on the modern table. Hostesses in the 1970s prided themselves on precision celery, cut in perfect 2-inch pieces, strings removed, filled, and chilled to perfection. A tray serving 20 cost around $1.50, but the labor was a quiet act of love. By the 1980s, finger foods grew flashier and simpler, and stuffed celery disappeared from party trays. Yet those crisp green bites remind us of something timeless, that the beauty of food lies not in extravagance, but in the care of the hands that prepare it. What once began in the marshes of nature ended as a memory of grace on every holiday table. 23. Cheese ball accompaniments. Imagine walking into a cozy living room during the holidays in the 1970s, the scent of pine needles and baked ham in the air, a record spinning quietly in the corner. On the coffee table sits the evening centerpiece, a perfectly round cheese ball surrounded by crackers, celery sticks, and bright slices of bell pepper. It wasn't just a snack, it was a ritual. Guests gathered around, spreading and laughing, sharing stories as they filled their plates. but the idea of communal eating reaches back much further than cocktail parties. For Native peoples, food was always shared in circles. No one ate apart from the group. That same spirit lived on in gatherings like these, where a single dish brought everyone together. In 1977, a full platter of crackers and vegetables cost about $3 to prepare, but what it created was priceless connection. When pre-made party trays arrived in grocery stores, the homemade touch faded, yet the memory lingers of hands reaching together, of simple abundance. The cheese ball may have changed, but the spirit of sharing around it remains as old as America itself. 24. German potato salad. Picture a picnic in the late 1970s, paper plates, the buzz of cicadas, and the unmistakable aroma of warm potatoes tossed in tangy bacon dressing. German potato salad, rich and hearty, stood apart from its creamy American cousin. Served warm, it felt alive, sharp with vinegar, smoky with bacon, and kissed with parsley. But beneath its European name lies a deeper story of adoption and adaptation, the way foreign roots found a new home in native soil. Long before potatoes crossed the ocean, native tribes were already masters of the earth, cultivating and honoring root vegetables as sacred gifts. When this humble tuber arrived, it was embraced with the same reverence, another reminder that nourishment comes from balance with the land. By 1976, a full pot cost about $1 to make and could feed an entire family. As lighter foods gained favor in the 1980s, this dish faded from summer tables. Yet the warm tang of German potato salad still speaks of unity, of how cultures like ingredients blend into something richer when shared. It is at its heart the taste of belonging. 25. Watergate salad. Imagine a suburban kitchen in the mid-1970s, avocado green appliances, gleaming laughter echoing as someone folds Cool Whip into a bright green bowl. This was Watergate salad, a sweet pistachio-flavored mixture of pudding, marshmallows, canned fruit, and chopped nuts. Its origins were half recipe, half rumor. Some said a Kraft employee invented it. Others joked it was full of nuts and covered up just like the scandal that gave it its name. Yet behind the humor lies a reflection of a changing America. Once food came straight from the earth, corn roasted over fire, beans simmered in clay pots. Now the same spirit of creativity lived inside boxes and cans, shaped by convenience, but still driven by the desire to gather and share. In 1976, a bowl serving 12 cost about $2, sweet, simple, and endlessly cheerful. As the years passed, the salad's bright color and sugary taste felt out of step with modern tastes, but nostalgia kept it alive. Watergate salad may have been born in a scandal, yet it endures as a symbol of joy in hard times, proof that even laughter can be an ingredient in survival. 26. Wild rice soup. Picture a crisp autumn morning near the Great Lakes mist, curling above still water, the sound of paddles breaking the surface as Ojibwe harvesters sing to the rice. They called it manumin, the good berry, a sacred grain that fed generations long before it appeared on restaurant menus or in creamy soup bowls. By the 1970s, that tradition found its way into Midwestern kitchens as wild rice soup, a hearty blend of rice cream and sometimes game meat or mushrooms. Each pot carried both flavor and reverence. Home cooks simmered it slowly, letting the nutty aroma fill the room, a faint echo of canoes gliding through wild rice beds centuries before. In 1975, the ingredients cost about $3, simple but steeped in meaning. When faster, thinner soups took over store shelves, this dish quietly drifted from the spotlight. Yet wild rice soup remains a bridge between two Americas, one ancient, one modern, both shaped by the same grain. Every spoonful feels like a prayer of gratitude, for the land, for the lake, and for the people who first taught us how to listen to both. 27. Pemmican. Picture the winds sweeping across the northern plains centuries before highways and diners existed. Hunters returned from the chase carrying strips of dried bison meat berries and rendered fat the ingredients for pemmican, the original survival food of the Americas. Long before the 1970s fascination with energy bars, native peoples had already mastered the art of portable strength. Each bite was dense with life, carrying enough nourishment to sustain a traveler through snow and hunger. By the time America entered the modern age, pemmican had evolved from necessity to heritage. Some families still prepared it during powwows or cultural gatherings using venison or beef mixed with wild choke cherries. It wasn't fancy, it was enduring. In the 1970s, a small batch might cost only a few dollars, but its value lay in preservation, not price. While store-bought protein bars filled gym bags, pemmican remained sacred, a quiet reminder of endurance and respect for the hunt. It was food designed not for indulgence, but for survival and spirit. Even now, its taste carries the rhythm of drums and the heartbeat of a people who learn to thrive with the land, never apart from it. 28. Fry bread. Picture the golden crackle of dough frying in cast iron, the scent rising into a desert morning on a Navajo reservation. Fry bread, warm, crisp, and tender inside, is both comfort and contradiction. Born not from abundance but from survival, it came to life when native families were forced onto government rations in the 1860s. With little more than flour, salt, and lard, they turned hardship into sustenance. By the 1970s, fry bread had become a symbol, a food that carried both pain and pride. At powwows and fairs, women stood behind folding tables, shaping dough with practiced hands, serving it with beans, honey, or ground beef. In 1975, a dozen pieces cost only a few dollars to make, but the value went far beyond cost. Every bite held the memory of endurance, of mothers feeding children when the cupboards were bare. Some see fry bread as a wound, others as resilience. But for all, it is a story of survival, written in oil and flour, proof that even in lost culture endures. The sizzle in that pan is more than sound. It's the heartbeat of history, still echoing across generations. 29. Hominy stew. Picture a clay pot simmering slowly over an open flame, the air filled with the scent of corn smoke and earth. Long before it appeared in cookbooks or cafes, hominy stew was a staple among native nations from the Southwest to the plains. Made from nixtamalized corn kernels soaked in lime water to unlock their nutrients, it was food born from science, spirit, and patience. By the 1970s, hominy stew appeared in both native and southern kitchens, a quiet bridge between ancient wisdom and modern comfort. Cooks added beans, chili, or bits of meat, turning simplicity into richness. Each bubbling pot told a story of survival through cold seasons and lean harvests. In 1976, the ingredients cost about $1, yet the taste carried centuries of tradition. When instant soups and canned meals became common, this humble stew faded from the American table. But for those who still make it, the first spoonful feels like coming home. The warmth of the fire, the rhythm of the stirring spoon, and the knowledge that the oldest recipes need no reinvention, only remembrance. 30. Acorn bread. Picture an autumn forest in the Sierra foothills, golden leaves drifting down, the sound of a wooden mortar echoing through the trees. Women of the Miwok and Chumash tribes once gathered acorns by the basketful, cracking, leaching, and grinding them into fine meal. From that meal came acorn bread, dark, nutty, and dense with the flavor of the earth. It was food born of patience and understanding, a reminder that even bitterness could be transformed into strength. Centuries later, in the 1970s, a few homesteaders and historians revived the recipe, baking loaves from wild acorn flour as an act of reconnection. Each one required hours of care, soaking away tannins and mixing the meal with honey or cornmeal to balance its rustic taste. A loaf cost nearly nothing, but its worth was immeasurable. It fed body, spirit, and memory. Modern kitchens rarely make space for such rituals, yet acorn bread remains a quiet testament to endurance. It teaches that every season offers what we need if we're willing to listen. And as the scent of roasted acorn fills the air, it feels less like a recipe and more like a prayer whispered back to the forest. As our journey through these forgotten dishes comes to a close, one truth remains: food has always been more than nourishment. Every grain of corn, every bowl of soup, every loaf baked by firelight carries the story of survival, gratitude, and belonging. The recipes we've revisited, from humble succotash to sacred fry bread, aren't just flavors from the past. They are memories of the land itself, passed down through hands that respected the earth and each other. Some of these dishes may never return to every table, but their spirit endures in every home that remembers. They remind us that comfort was once handmade, patience was an ingredient, and eating was an act of community. So, next time you taste something simple, a bit of corn, a slice of bread, a spoonful of soup, remember whose hands first shaped it. The story of native food is in truth the story of America itself. If these memories stirred something in you, don't let them fade. Hit like, share this video, and subscribe to help keep the voices of our ancestors alive, one meal at a time.